Deborah, this is so exciting that you're here. And Deborah and I just sat over there and watched that movie that you had not seen, this video. So my first question is, what were you thinking when you saw it?
How have you ever did it without my knowing? I'd like to know things that is happening.
Well,
that was a total surprise. It's well done. So I said, can I have a copy? And she said, yes.
Absolutely, and it was Nancy who put that together. Nancy's so talented and so creative.
Nancy!
So I know you weren't expecting it, but it was kind of the beginning to now. And is there any one of those photos that kind of really touched you more than maybe the others?
Well, my kids. My daughter is still alive and very well, and right now she's rafting down the Grand Canyon. At least she's just finished rafting there. And unfortunately, my son died of melanoma.
Maybe because there's a lot of new people here, can you tell us a little bit about Alex?
Well, Alex founded an organization called iSpa. He was a co-founder, and he was the president for the first 9 years. So when you say chip off the old block, it's appropriate. Whether the block is a woman or a man doesn't seem to make much difference. No, Alex he loved people. He had more friends. After there was special service after he died, I had at least 30 leaders in San Diego community said, Alex and I were best friends. He just, you know.
He did have a collection of friends, and I was happy to know him and work with him, actually. And it's interesting, because when I saw the video, the most striking was the picture of Sarah Olivia and you and Alex.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, you know, the ranch was there, Golden Door was there, all of the past, but it really is the family. I guess it's like what we've all learned, that in the end, that's what really matters.
Well, the ranch is its own self a person, and with the sort of the family that support it. But the ranch is a remarkable staff. We have most wonderful people working there. And it's a life job. Once they get a job there, they stay forever until they retire. And so it makes life very easy for us to sort of manage the ranch, because everybody feels they own it, and they're going to be there for the rest of their life, so they're going to do wonderful things.
They'll take good care of it. Tell us, how old were you when you first stepped on the property that is now Rancho La Puerta?
I was 18. There was a war in Europe. This is 1940.
1940.
And for 9 years, my husband had no papers. And those of you with foreign roots know that if you have no papers, you can't go anyplace, because you don't belong to anything, and people don't like that. So in any case, he was Hungarian with a Romanian passport, because his part of Hungary became part of Romania after World War I. And we were living in Hollywood, where he was lecturing and teaching, and all was very well. And along came the war, and along came a thing, he had to renew his passport. And they wouldn't renew it because they had asked him to come to Romania to fight on the side of Hitler. It didn't make any difference that he was Jewish. I mean, as far as the US government concerned, at World War II, this didn't exist, this whole situation. So he couldn't go back to Romania to fight on the side of Hitler. He could, but I mean, we don't talk about him being stupid.
That he was not. How many languages did he speak?
What?
How many languages did your husband speak, Edmund?
He spoke a half a dozen languages really well, and smatterings of another half a dozen.
Yeah, I remember the number was amazing. So, Deborah, tell us, or tell everyone, just exactly how old you are.
Well, I'm 95, and I didn't realize. Read that piece of paper. And I just came back from Europe, and I had a wonderful time for 2 weeks. I had to go, I didn't have to, but a friend of mine was being celebrated in Sweden, and I had never been to Norway and Denmark, so I went, if I'm going to go to Sweden, I might as well
Absolutely. So
do a trick.
you literally just got back, 4 days ago from Sweden, flew to California, did a little work, and then flew here.
And Peter was looking up because something came up about age. And he said, and this is 0.1% of the population, women or men in the US, is 95 years old or older. 0.1%. That made me feel very responsible. When he gave it to me, I said, wow. What am I supposed to do? Wave a flag and say, hey, all of you who are part of that 1%, 0.1%, let's get active and do things and set examples, which is a sense of responsibility.
Well, we are glad in our industry that you are our godmother. We talk about that quite a bit, having started the Rancho Puerta, and then years later, the Golden Door. And I'll just remind Deborah, although she can tell me the story better than I can tell her, of when we met, because it was 1973, and Deborah interviewed my twin sister for a job, and Katrine.
And gave her the job.
Yes, and you hired her. And at that time, Katrine had gotten another job offer. And she called me and said, I have 2 job offers. I'm not sure which one to take. And I said to her, well, whichever one you don't take, I would like to take. We're very close sisters. And so she called me the next day and she said, well, as much as I'd love to work at the Golden Door, I'm going to take the other job. And so then Katrine called you and said,
she said, if I didn't tell you that it's my sister and not me, you wouldn't know the difference. But she, felt very honest, and she had to tell me that the one who would show up for work on Monday was not the one I hired.
So, we were so green. We were just out of college. And so Katrine said, well, Deborah will interview you. I guess you want to make sure that, there wasn't too much of a difference. So I flew out to California, and sure enough, we graduated from the same college. We had the same grade point average, the same degree.
Which was very high, a grade. Tell them with the grade point average. Oh.
Well, we did graduate cum laude.
Yes,
so
indeed. And that impressed me, and when you're an employer, you look at those things.
And you remember them when you're 95, if you're Deborah. Anyway. So I did fly out, I did have the interview, and you said, well, the resume looked the same, we looked the same, so you figured, well, I might as well hire you. And so I moved to California, and I started working at the Golden Door, which at that time was the old Golden Door, what we referred to as the old Golden Door. Tell us about the old Golden Door.
Well, we had the ranch in Mexico in 1940.
1940.
And my husband was reluctant to have kids. At that time, where we were living in Mexico, was quite primitive and this and that. And he said, we'll have to wait until we can raise them in the style that they should be raised. So after 15 years of marriage, you feel you better start having your kids pretty soon or else. And so he had a condition that we have a business in the States. And so I made a down payment on an old motel, not an old, small motel, a few years old, and was busy fixing it up and working on it. And along came a man from the highway and said, we're going to have to build a berm. The freeway is going here. And I said, the freeway? Going there in front of me? Move it. Why there? Why in front of me? And he said, we'll build a berm. And so our guests would look at, an artificial mountain. And I said, no, that wouldn't do it. And I said, and And I said, why didn't they check first? There's only one building in 15 miles, and you're going to put the freeway in front of right in front of my door. And he said, well, they thought it was an old building, an old place. And I said, your governor's wife is here. Nancy Reagan was at the door that week. So I went to Nancy, probably in tears, and she called Ronnie, and Ronnie said, I can't do anything about it. It's federal. I'm state.
Not much has changed.
So,
But then it was kind of good news that happened.
yes. So I sued the state. Nobody had ever sued the state of California. They had offered very little money, and and San Diego didn't have anyone who sued the state of California. Los Angeles didn't have anyone. I found somebody in San Francisco. So I had to go back and forth to San Francisco to sue the state over real estate. And yeah, I ended up by getting 2.5 times what they had offered me. So it was a very successful lawsuit.
She was always a good businesswoman. And so then you decided, so you have an opportunity to build a new Golden Door.
Yeah.
And you knew immediately what you were going to build.
I did something that was a gift from God. I built a Japanese inn, an authentic Japanese inn in Escondido, California. And that still is the Golden Door. And it is still incredibly beautiful. And any other building would go out of style. And we have the ranch in Mexico, which is, Spanish colonial, which is appropriate to that. And if we had built anything else, you'd be busy remodeling. But an authentic Japanese inn doesn't need remodeling. And it still is beautiful as ever. And the gardens are great. And gardening is my deep, deep love. And so the ranch has great gardens, and the Golden Door has great times. And great staff.
And I remember, and I didn't think about this because I didn't really know what Rancho La Puerta. I didn't speak Spanish, still don't. But the Rancho La Puerta and the Golden Door have kind of a connection name-wise.
Well, the name. So when I was building the Golden Door, my son was still nursing, and I was remodeling the old Golden Door, and I'd say, give him some water, I'm on my way home. Anyhow, so it was very, every penny was borrowed.
And I was lucky enough to be at the Golden Door 3 months at the old Golden Door before we moved into the new Golden Door.
Yeah.
And it was such a blessing to see the past. And, I didn't know back then that my whole life would be in this industry. But I think it was a great gift that I was able to see before and after. And
made contributions to before and after.
Well, thank you. And, when I started there, I just felt like, and I was just out of college, but it just felt like I was home. It was such a beautiful place, and the guests were fantastic. It was California, and the sunshine, and exercise, and beauty, and massages. And I remember at the old Golden Door, every single room around this motel was decorated differently. And every one of them was magical. You went into the French room, and then there was an Italian room, and so on. And in the middle was like a Garden of Eden. And it was just fantastic. Then we moved to the new Golden Door with the Japanese inn, and the rest is history. And it's been extremely successful. You don't own it anymore, but it still has your legacy, and
it gets more beautiful all the time because everything has grown and been pruned and developed, so it looks more and more like a wonderful Japanese landscape.
And the program that you started there and at the ranch is pretty much still...
Hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed.
Fitness is fitness. I mean, any way you look at it, jumping up and down enough times, walking enough times, all those things, nothing has changed. Exercise is exercise, and it's absolutely indispensable.
So in the few minutes we have left, I just want to ask you 2 questions. You're 95 now. So when you think back, is there anything that you wish you knew or did differently then that now at 95 you were either not expecting or you wished you had done a little more of this or a little less of that? Or have you felt pretty much you've really satisfied with how you've lived all those years?
No one's ever satisfied because there's so many potentials and so many things. We started a program of fitness in the schools in San Diego. In 18 park and recreation centers, I had exercise classes. And along came a proposition that the expense was the custodian, not the teachers. The teachers were retired Marines and service and nurses. I mean, we had these classes all over San Diego. But the custodians of the park and recreation thing had to work at night. And that budget wasn't in the budget. And so it lasted only about a dozen years. I wish I had been able to fight that program so that every park and recreation department, I wanted it all over the United States, that you would have exercise classes. Because it's so hard, I mean, the competition from television and this and that, and people have got to move. The secret to good longevity, I don't like it every day, but I go and I do an aerobic class every morning, 5 times a week. And on the weekends, I walk. And it's a very small price to pay for feeling healthy.
Well said, I would say. So you're 95, and I've known you such a long time, Deborah, and you've spoken about becoming 100 many, many times. So you have 5 years. So what are you going to do between now and 100? What's the plan?
Well, I've been enjoying traveling. I just now came back from Sweden, Norway, and Denmark. And I have planning now to go in May. In other words, I have to do my travels twice a year, not once a year, because I want to see a bunch of things still.
You have 10 more places to go.
And so in May, I'm planning to go to Vienna and briefly to Hungary, a big thing. But basically, I've never been to Poland, where my father was born. And I've been to Russia only just briefly, and then I wanted to spend some time in Russia. So, you know, there comes a time when you have the money, you can do it, and the health to do it, do it.
Deborah, you are such an inspiration. And, you know, our theme this year was living a well life. And I just cannot think of anyone that is a better role model for living a well life than you, Deborah. And I just think it's just so exciting that we are sort of descendants of yours in a way. Deborah's been my mentor all these years. And so I just thank you from all of us for being such an example. And we can't wait to celebrate your 100th birthday, wherever we might be.
And main thing is have fun.
Oh,
Not tomorrow, today.